Well, the BBC probably won't like this. Let's begin. Well, of course, in the ever-evolving world of television, the TV licence has become the provincial dinosaur of the industry, isn't it? It's kind of like trying to pay for a round of drinks at the pub with medieval coins when everyone else is using contactless payment. And of course, the BBC wants its cut for providing a handful of channels, but we've got Netflix streaming services and more channels than we can shake a remote control at. But MP Sir John Redwood seems to want to be the TV revolutionary. He's proposed a solution so wild, it's kind of like suggesting that we could elect a penguin as Prime Minister, even though at the minute I kind of think we got a snake. But anyway, Sir John thinks that the BBC licence fee payers should be given shares in the corporation and allowed to appoint its bosses. I mean, can you imagine that? I own the BBC! But hold on to your horses, because there is a method to his madness. Sir John argues that the ownership is a defining line between conservatism and socialism. It's like saying, I'm not a socialist, I own shares in a TV station. We're surely witnessing a political twist that could put reality TV to shame here, aren't we? I mean, the BBC, according to Sir John, it's like that one friend who insists on discussing their stamp collection at a party, out of touch and needs a makeover. It's now a major player in the net zero movement and a supporter of international governance, both of which unfortunately the TV licence fee payers have no say in. But here's the thing, Sir John suggests that we the people should have a say in how the BBC runs. We'd all become shareholders in this grand broadcasting adventure. I mean, picture it. Heated debates over whether Strictly Come Dancing should include tango or less cha-cha. I personally think that the BBC should go down the advertising route. That way we wouldn't have to pay them anything at all and it would be companies who'd be footing the bill. And personally to me, and I'm sure quite a lot of other people out there, the BBC is just another channel and is not worth putting on a pedestal like so many celebrities seem to want to do. And I don't think the BBC has any right at all to demand that we basically paying them to watch other TV channels live. It's got nothing to do with them, hasn't it, how other stations run their finances or what we watch, so they should keep their nose out in my opinion. But anyway, the article says that the BBC licence fee payers should be given shares in the corporation and to be allowed to appoint its bosses, a Tory MP has said. Sir John Redwood made the call for the licence fee shake-up in a pamphlet promoting its ownership revolution for the Centre of Policy Studies centre-right think tank. A Conservative MP said that ownership is a core philosophical dividing line between conservatism and socialism. He described that the BBC as the most obvious state service that could be transformed by wider ownership. Criticising the licence fee model, he said that the broadcasters' revenues are being eroded by people switching to streaming services. Sir John also said that the BBC is losing viewers as it is often out of touch with much of its potential audience due to a focus on a narrow set of attributes and interests. He said it has become a major voice of the net zero movement and a robust supporter of international governments and an opponent of populism. Sir John said the best way to resolve this is surely to ask the people, the present and potential users of the service, what service they would like and which parts should be free and how much it should be paid for. The government should therefore announce that the BBC will be given to licence fee payers and on a stated date. Anyone who is paying the licence fee would be granted a single share of the BBC, which would be newly incorporated to reflect this ownership change. I wonder if that means we'll get a share of their profits as well, because that might be quite interesting, especially considering how much they pay celebrities like Gary Lineker, I'm guessing. Anyway, under the proposal, the corporation could pitch for a continuing government grant for public broadcasting element or sell new shares to raise capital for the future. And the BBC spokesperson said, the BBC's existing charter runs until the end of 2027. And wait for it, beyond that, there is a discussion on whether and if the licence fees needs to evolve. So hopefully that means the BBC has at least taken its head out of its bum. But I'll believe that when I see it. We look forward to a healthy public debate. Yeah, I bet they do. Probably as much as a fart in a lift, I'm guessing. But anyway, that ensures the BBC is best equipped to continue delivering for audiences in the UK and around the world. Well, the plot thickens, doesn't it? Because here we have Rishi Sunak, who, if I remember rightly, the other day boldly slammed Ramonas and Brexit doomsayers while suddenly orchestrating covert re-entry into the European Union's Horizon Science Research Programme. And if you ask me, Rishi seems to be trying to slip this one through the back door, because possibly quietly rejoining a part of the EU that he probably exactly doesn't want to shout from the rooftops. But so, Rishi, people do need to know. But this does raise some intriguing questions, doesn't it? I mean, just how slippery is this slope going to be? And how long, of course, before we suddenly find ourselves, in effect, a full EU member again if we keep signing up to bits and bobs every so often. It's kind of like saying you're on a diet, but you keep sampling them desserts, though, boy. And there's also talk of a conversation with the European Commission's President, Ursula von der Leyen. And you can almost hear them, can't you, discussing terms like characters in a spy movie. But Rishi, apparently ever the cautious person, drops hints of possible breakthrough, suggesting that discussions have been extensively involved. As if he's saying, we've had some heart-to-heart chats and I think we might be able to kiss and make up. The thing is though, Rishi, we voted to leave. And that means leaving all institutions connected with the EU, in my opinion. I mean, you don't ring up to leave Sky, but then still expect to watch Sky movies, do you? Although apparently also Rishi is concerned about value for money. It's not surprising at all, is it, considering the amount of value, we've been getting from the millions of pounds that we've been giving France over the years to stop, the illegal boat people. With each time, of course, promises being made, presumably like, don't worry, we know what we've done wrong this time, we'll be fine. Whilst, of course, the rest of us actually don't notice any change at all with the numbers and appear just to watch our hard-earned taxpayers' money get flushed down the drain. But anyway, the article says that Britain is reportedly set to rejoin the European Union's £85 billion Horizon Science Research Programme after a 2-year absence over a bitter post-Brexit row. Sources familiar with the negotiations between the two sides said that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has given a go-ahead for the deal to be finalised. Well, why do we have to sign up with things with the EU? I mean, we left there. Can't we sign up with things with America instead? Or other places? When will these people learn that the world is so much more bigger than the EU? And that there might be countries out there that might have better scientists than the EU itself? An agreement could be announced within days, Bloomberg reported, but the level of compensation for the UK being frozen out of the scheme for 2 years during a post-Brexit row over Northern Ireland is still thought to be an issue. A conversation with the European Commissioner, President Ursula von der Leyen, would be expected before the announcement. Speaking at Prime Minister's questions earlier, Mr Sunak said his priority and preference was to associate with the Horizon, but on terms that are right for both the British taxpayer and for British science and research. And in a hint of a possible breakthrough, he added that the government has been extremely involved in discussions. Probably about how to bend over, I'm guessing, but anyway, with the EU, and I hope to be able to conclude those successfully. Whitehall sources said that in July, a draft deal was with the Prime Minister, prompting scientists to cautiously celebrate the development. But Downing Street said that a UK-based alternative, known as Pioneer, remained on the table, as Mr Sunak continued to be concerned about value for money. And apparently Horizon is a coalition involving Europe's leading research institutes and technology companies. EU member states contribute funds which are then allocated to individuals or organisations on merit. Britain apparently continued to participate following Brexit, but was locked out during the row over trading rules for Northern Ireland in 2020. Well, to be honest, we actually left formally in 2020, so I think that's why we left, rather than being locked out. But, of course, apparently, relations have improved since Mr Sunak struck his Windsor framework deal with the bloc in February to resolve issues with the Northern Ireland Protocol. And in my opinion, that Windsor framework is completely awful and kind of actually shackles us back to the EU in itself. Well, everyone grab your cups and strings because BT, the telecoms giant, is pulling off one of the greatest magic tricks of our digital age, making landlines disappear. And quite a lot of people, mostly our grandparents, still rely on. So what is their master plan? Well, they are replacing trusty landline phones with fancy new digital ones that unfortunately have a need for internet connections, which I'm guessing quite a lot of OAPs don't actually have. And therefore, it's kind of like forcing your grandma to be some sort of tech wizard, isn't it? And let's be honest, teaching some OAPs, not all of them, but some OAPs, how to use a remote control, it's kind of like already an Olympic level challenge as it is, isn't it? But, well, it kind of gets better because everything has been happily connected to those traditional phone lines, like door entry systems and alarms, that of course will need to be re-evaluated. It's a bit like decorating your house. Instead of just changing the paint colour, you decide to move the kitchen into the attic. Practical, isn't it, eh? But BT's digital voice programme launched back in 2019 and probably was about as controversial as pineapple on pizza at a Pizza Lovers Convention, which in my opinion definitely belongs in pizza. But anyway, they've now decided to put their plan into action, and starting today, new customers won't even be offered those classic landline phones anymore, and existing customers who dare to switch onto a new contract will be swiftly ushered into their digital age, whether they want to or not. And in my opinion, that is so wrong. Apparently big names like BT, Sky, TalkTalk and Vodafone are all dancing to the same digital tune. It's kind of like they're all on the same sort of secret mission to phase out the analogue world, isn't it? But here's the thing, almost 10 million lines still need to make the jump before BT switches off the old analogue system in December 2025. So in the next few years, households will have to decide between getting a broadband connection and keeping those digital calls with their landline, or simply embracing a mobile phone, which unfortunately for some OAPs might be a bit of a learning curve. And they quite rightly, in my opinion, got worried that our elderly and vulnerable people might be left high and dry, unable to reach out to loved ones or call for help during a power outage or whatever, an emergency. And yes, obviously I got a point with that, especially when millions of households out there presumably don't have access to the internet at the minute. It's kind of like telling your grandparents to send an email when they've never actually sent a text message. And BT did this little dance, of course, temporarily halting their plans, but now of course they resumed it, assuring us that everything's under control. I mean, they've promised to provide free handsets for the elderly and vulnerable, which magically switch over using broadband and mobile network signals during power cuts. But tell me this, BT, what happens if OAPs don't actually want to pay for the internet that they probably won't use for anything else other than making calls? I mean, what happens then, eh? Are they just not allowed to have a phone no more? Even though, of course, they might have been using one for decades. It's just out of order, in my opinion. But anyway, the article says that BT is making a change which will directly affect thousands of customers. The telecoms giant is pushing ahead with its plan to scrap the traditional landline phone lines from today for new users, and it will see traditional home phones replaced with new digital ones, requiring all homes to have an internet connection. Everything that is connected to the phone lines will need to be reviewed, such as door entry systems and alarms, and BT launched its digital voice program back in 2019, with the plan being deemed as controversial. And from today, customers will no longer be offered landline phones, and existing customers switching to a new contract will also be transferred to the new service. OpenReach, the wholesale provider, has already stopped selling old landlines in more than 500 areas, covering 4.6 million homes. This includes communication providers on its network such as BT, Sky, TalkTalk and Vodafone. Just under 10 million lines still need to move to the new system before BT switches off the old analogue system in December 2025. And the switch could mean that households will need to get either a broadband connection to be able, to make digital calls with their landline, or a new mobile phone. There are concerns, of course, from charities when the plans were first announced that elderly or vulnerable Brits could be left isolated by the move. An investigation also found out that the move would leave thousands of vulnerable customers at risk of not being able to phone in emergency services during power outages, which actually is quite a big problem. Regulator Ofcom said at the time that millions of households don't have access to the internet, and following this, BT temporarily halted the planned rollout. Plans, though, have been resumed in June, and the company said that it has addressed the concerns. BT said that will ensure the vulnerable and elderly households are kept connected, providing free handsets that switch between using broadband and a mobile network signal during power cuts. But then again, in this video, it seems like the emergency services won't even come if you call them anyway, which actually is a massive problem in itself.